and welcome to Abilities United Presents Community Connections, a program dedicated to those individuals living with a developmental or physical challenge. I'm Andrea Thronson, Community Connections Developer. Tonight our theme is Building Community and How Do We Do It? We will be talking with two distinguished guests as well as showing several important video pieces. With me now is my first guest, Jeff Morgan, the Executive Director of First Community Housing. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So our whole theme being building community, how do we do it? What comes to mind when I say the words, how do we build community?
Well, when I think about how do we build community, I think it's good to start at what isn't community. And one of the things that I think about is a story of one of our residents named Emily. So recently we opened a new community in Mountain View called 1585 Studios.
Right.
Emily is one of our residents. She's wheelchair enabled, and she was actually a resident in California for quite some time with her parents. She moved to Virginia with her family to be with them.
Living at home.
And what happened was she lived at home, but because they didn't have services in Virginia that could support her independence, she found herself shut into her own home. So in order for her to have a place to live where she was connected, so it was the opposite, it was isolation. I mean, even to become human, we have to learn to be human from our parents and family and from people that connect with us. And so for Emily, home was, even though she was with her parents, home was actually 3,000 miles away.
Oh, and how isolating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when she came to our 1585 Studios, one of the things that I think was really special is the fact that we have a combination of both housing and services. So there's the notion of supportive housing. And supportive housing means that we avoid the kinds of root causes of homelessness by not only providing somebody a place to live, but by equipping them when they live there. So one of the first things she might say is, now that I have a home, I want to find out where I can go, so I can go outside of the home. So she arrived, and she was first helped by Housing Choices Coalition. They helped her with all the paperwork, they helped her understand the lease-up process, all the difficulties there, and then she worked with Abilities United. They had a rich variety of programs. In our community, of course, we have a combination of passes, free transit passes, and she has paratransit. So all of a sudden she's connected. She's able to reach out. She had community from within as well. There were people there, and sometimes the simplest things like programs, parties, things that happen on site allow people to have those connections. I think community really begins with the home, but it goes beyond that. Every home has connections outside. There's the physical connections of electricity. The man comes in, he brings garbage. There's a broader connection out to a larger community. There are telephone lines, etc. There are those kinds of services that go greater and greater. So you have a community from within, but you also have the community on the outside. And so what does that do? Some of her friends used paratransit. They were also wheelchair enabled, and they were going to San Jose State University.
Wow.
And so this person was able to work on his engineering degree. We had other residents who were working in Santa Clara, and they wanted to work with children. Many of these folks had grown up together, but you know, when you go through the system of the regional center system that supports the developmentally disabled, and you're educated, that education sort of ends at age 21, and then there's the question of what do you do? And if you're a parent, there could be a lot of fear there. I'm getting older, my adult children need some support. And what I think is really special is that Abilities United and First Community Housing as well, we're creating an environment that focuses on what people can do. That's extremely important. And so we have one resident that goes to work every day at Levi Stadium. They take their free transit pass and they're able to commute over to Levi Stadium and do work there. So what does this mean? This person is independent. And notice that she was alone, and alone is not the same as independent. Now she's independent, and she's independent because she's in community.
Right. And I think what you're saying, which is absolutely pivotal, when a person is isolated first, when we're talking about building community, you have to build community within yourself.
That's right.
And if you're isolated and depressed and shut in, you don't have the resources within yourself to even have the desire to go out.
That's right.
So it starts with building that community with yourself. And then, as you're saying, you put that person, that individual, into a housing setting. But if you give
Right.
them housing, you need to help them with how do you do daily living.
That's right.
You can't just throw them in there and have them, not succeed.
And in addition, it's very important to work on environmental sustainability. We have severely autistic residents in some of our communities, but we use non-toxic finishes. We try to work with ecologically friendly materials. So within the environment, we're seeing a reduction of emergency room visits, and anecdotally, some of the parents are telling us this.
Right.
And what does that mean? I can be more independent. I'm no longer have to be burdened by having to be supported in that way as much. There's an independence when you have parents that are still able to be involved. There's a quote, one of my favorite architects is Santiago Calatrava, and he talks about bridge building. And a lot of what we do in community is building a bridge.
Right.
And the thing that he says about bridges is that when you create a bridge between two communities, both sides are transformed.
Right.
And what we do at many of these communities is, because the services are there, we're bringing in a variety of different people that enrich the universe of the residents. But in addition, the parents are involved there, they are more independent, and they tend to also advocate for their residents. And we're not afraid of that because we're transparent. The property management company, when we first got involved in this community, we did design charrettes after we were done. And a lot of the residents, when they said, there's something I don't understand, or the property manager has their point of view, Abilities United has their point of view, the residents and the parents, get them all together in a room. Get everyone talking about the ideas.
Right.
And then when you expand those possibilities, you create those connections. And, if you're in the faith community, what does that look like? It's love.
Right.
And what is love? Love is relationships.
Right.
And so if you think about that, by doing that, you're really creating something that's much richer than the sum of its parts.
Well, and what I really hear you saying is that you start with the community on an individual level.
That's right.
You put them into these housing situations where they can start to learn to have community with their environment,
That's
their
right.
actual living situation. So then they're building up on that second tier. And then from there, because their needs are taken care of, their daily living, and they're not in emergency situations,
Right.
then they can go out and they themselves can build community, such as working at Levi Stadium and being a part
Right.
of that as well.
That's right. And there's many great stories about wonderful, productive residents. And if you mix communities, we have some that are general populations. You think, how do people interact and how do they understand each other? We found actually, because this community bonds so well together, and they have a lot of pride about where they live if it's well designed, that they'll actually call people out. They'll say, hey,
Right.
we need to follow these rules. These are non-toxic finishes on the, there's no smoking here. He's smoking, don't let him smoke.
Right.
And that's actually a really good thing, because you're encouraging the whole community to be healthier. And everybody has a better understanding because of that.
And traditionally, when people say building community, you think in a broad spectrum. You
Yes.
think, oh my goodness, we need to go out, City of Palo Alto, City of Mountain View.
Yes.
But really, what you're doing, if these individuals are building a relationship with one person next door where they're saying, hey, don't smoke, they're building community
That's
amongst
right.
themselves. So, where two or more are gained, you've got community and going down even on that very basic level.
Right. And so we have these sort of concentric communities. So there's the home, and then we go beyond that to the broader community within a particular community, which is an apartment community, say. And then afterwards you reach out even farther, where they're connected through free transit passes and that sort of thing, where they have jobs and they're actually providing more to residents outside, so from cities. And this involves a tremendous, what's really important is there's a partnership, that every piece of it links together. The city has to have the will for it to actually happen.
Right.
And so all of those pieces come together in such a way, and the opposite causes fraction. You have to create communities that are intentional and designed in such a way that it's something the community outside also wants and that way both sides are healthy and it creates real synergies.
Well, and I think too that when you talked earlier about that when people don't have the supportive environment, then they're spending their time in the emergency rooms.
That's right.
Their physical needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
That's right.
Then they're coming from an emergency background rather than hey, I feel good about myself, I'm taken care of, my needs are taken care of, I can then go forward in the community.
And in Santa Clara County, the opposite is many of these folks might be at risk of homelessness. And chronically homeless, it costs $60,000 according to studies to not be housed. So you think about the alternatives in terms of emergency room visits and police and et cetera, and you think about what the options are. Housing is healthcare. Housing is education.
Right.
Housing is a part of that community. That's what creates a health and really expands potential.
Right. And we're going to talk more about that. But first of all, since we've talked about 1585, the studios there, we've put together a little photo montage of the studios so that you can see bringing to life what this residence is really like. Let's have a look. That's the residential program over at 1585. And when I say 1585, it's 1585 in El Camino in Mountain View, and that's where the apartment complex is that some of the individuals live. It's really neat to see because what you're talking about is the cooking classes, the volunteer work, all of the programs that are supportive that are encompassed in that whole project. Right. Wonderful piece, wonderful piece. So now with me is another distinguished guest, and it's John McAllister. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about you. Were the mayor of Mountain View.
I was the former mayor, yes, but I'm still on council.
Okay, okay. When you are talking, you've heard us talk a little bit about building community from an individual standpoint and getting people into residential facilities and so forth. What comes to mind as far as the city of Mountain View? What, when you were as mayor, how did you build community?
I started out trying to set a tone. I wanted to be inviting, energetic, lively, happy, friendly, funny, and just made everybody feel comfortable, that they could speak their minds, and that when they spoke, everybody felt appreciated, that what they had to say, the city council, the city heard. And so I started with that idea of going out to the community and making sure that people could see the mayor, could see the rest of the city council, and felt comfortable with what was happening. And then as we progressed, once you set the tone, then we start doing the hard work of what do we do? We have a game plan. How are we going to implement it? How do we want to maintain what has been developed over decades for Mountain View? And Mountain View has been very conscious about how they want to keep diversity and how they want to have activities. And we start building community by offering like a downtown vibrant place, gathering spaces, the parks, the downtown, the library. We start with gathering places. We work then with community events to again bring people back to get to interchange, interact with people.
Yeah.
So we do our Thursday night lives, we do our parade, we do farmers market, and then we also work with outreach. And so when I was mayor, I would go to the military. We've had a long history of having the military in Mountain View in the Bay Area, but we haven't really included them into our lives of Mountain View and appreciated what they do. So we have a large contingency. Reach out to the schools and say, how can the schools, the very schools, we have 3 high schools in Mountain View, and 2 of them really don't talk to each other. And so how can we get the high schools to work with the smaller school, the elementary schools?
Right.
And so that was one aspect of going out and looking and try to get collaboration and communication going. And that helps bonds. And from there, once you get those collaborations going, then we start, hey, I could put this piece, I can help you, we can do this.
Right.
Neighbor can help neighbor, which was, if you get down to the bottom line of what we do, if we set the tone, is what's important is neighbor helping neighbor.
Going back to what we were talking about, individual, and one of your themes I noticed in kind of your platform was residents first.
Yeah.
Residents first, and don't be part of a problem, be part of the solution.
Absolutely.
And that's what I hear you saying, is that we're building that level one by one. I have to be honest that when I interact in social circles, one of the things that always comes up, Thursday Night Live, Mountain View Center for the Performing Arts, I mean, the list of things that you can do to fill a part of the whole, it's always Mountain View comes up, which successful community.
Yeah. Well, when Jeff was talking about the individuals staying in the house, being alone, well, now they can go out and be part of the community. Even though they're by themselves, they will see other people interacting. And it's just, hey, it's great to watch people and sit down on Castro Street and watch the people go by.
Right.
And you'll be part of the community.
Well, and what you're saying is you're addressing it on all levels, because by the farmers market, you're employing local farmers.
Yeah.
By doing the Thursday Night Lives, you're employing, bands, you're bringing productivity and that work revenue, as well as providing an off time for this stressed out, overworked Bay Area. That's good right there. That's a benefit. And so building that, I love both of how you've both incorporated the concept of community doesn't have to be this massive outpouring. It starts with the individual and then it mushrooms out as well. What got you interested, John, in community, public service? What got you interested?
2 kids. I had 2 kids, and I wanted to make it. I grew up in Mountain View. I've lived in Mountain View for 55 years, and so I knew the area, and I wanted the quality of life I had, to be as good as what I had for my kids. And so I got involved, and that goes back to the motto: be part of the solution, don't be part of the problem. And so I saw things were going maybe in a direction that I wasn't happy with, so I got involved.
Right.
And
it goes back to that psychological principle of where you put your energy, it grows.
Yeah.
So if we sit around and talk about how things aren't working and complain, that will grow. Yeah. But if we put our energy into what works, and like you said, most people, they thrive when they have a sense of inclusion. Yeah. I belong. And that's what we're all talking here. Right. I belong. I have purpose. This is, this brings meaning.
And Mountain View has been such a great partner. You think about purpose and meaning, and the ability to be involved in some of the programs and the leadership, frankly, that the city, we couldn't have possibly had this community without the support of the city. Right. And having the connections in the parks and the venues is exactly what you said. I've heard some people say, we have these surveys. People want to know, well, what do you do to improve the quality of life of your residents? And one of the main things that doesn't often get said is purpose and meaning. Purpose and meaning.
And that goes back to, again, the concept of ridding people of depression, isolation. When they have purpose and meaning, they thrive. Yeah. And everybody needs to thrive. So right now, what we're going to do is some of our participants at Abilities United take a TV production class at the Media Center. And they have come up with a film, a video, that highlights one of our community functions in Palo Alto, which is the Magical Bridge. So let's have a look at their video.
So the idea originally came because I have a daughter, Ava, and she wasn't able to use any of the parks here in Palo Alto. And you know, Dawn is a real go-getter in this community, so she said, we can do it. You and I are going to build a park for Ava and all the children like Ava.
It ended up taking longer than we thought it would take in the beginning, but it took us about 6 years to create this wonderful playground.
So I really enjoy the enthusiasm and the joy that I see on the children's faces when we say, we're going to the magical bridge.
We feel that all playgrounds should be like the Magical Bridge, designed and built for children and families of all abilities.
We are so thrilled at Milestones Preschool and at Abilities United to have Magical Bridge Playground here. It's a perfect community setting where our kids in Milestones can really help meet a lot of their developmental goals, play, gross motor, social skills, turn taking, you name it.
And it's fun. I get to be with my mommy and daddy, my whole family, because I like all the structures.
How fun is the playground for you?
It's very, very, very fun.
We had an artist from San Francisco create these stepping sounds. So as you come through here, it changes with different natural sounds like walking through snow, walking through leaves.
The equipment are developmentally appropriate for each child, and all the different equipment too is just a great way for the children to explore and have good gross and fine motor skills.
Differences disappear, and you start to play with children and parents, and you don't notice how they're different from you, but you notice what makes them similar to you. You can have fun in a playground designed for everybody.
Is the playground good for all ages?
Yeah, for all the people in all ages.
Or do we need more magical bridges?
Because we have had hundreds, really hundreds of communities around the world asking us for playgrounds like Magical Bridge, we are forming a new group and going to be doing exactly that.
Seeing this park be completed and watching both young and old people enjoy the thrill of being able to participate in play that otherwise they would never be able to do is why we did all of this. This park is all about magic and everyone feeling welcome and being kind to each other.
Our participants have done an excellent job of portraying and showing what the city of Palo Alto is doing to create community itself with the Magical Bridge. That's a wonderful, wonderful place. So we don't have too much time left, but we've come up with a lot about what is community, what does it mean to build community. Where do we go from here? We can't just sit around and theorize about all this.
Right.
What do we do? Where do we go from here?
So my personal vision is that we have all these different groups that serve in so many wonderful ways, that each of these disciplines blends together and blends together. Because as I've said earlier, housing is healthcare. If that's the case, then sometimes resources going to housing from healthcare actually cause better outcomes. And I think the more we do that, the more people will be able to serve. And nationally, if we do that, it's going to cause a much richer community, and that's going to have much more positive social benefits. So what I see in the future is blending those disciplines in a way that holistically helps all the communities to thrive better.
And you're not only talking about just on a practical dollars and cents level,
Right.
You're talking about emotionally,
Yes.
mentally, physically. We're talking about having a population coming from health, not coming from problems.
And including education, jobs. Our life expectancy shouldn't be dictated by zip code. And I think the more opportunities we provide in different communities like Mountain View, the better off everyone's going to be.
Right. And we all deserve that chance. We all need that, our basic needs to be met, housing, food, shelter, so that we can become self-actualized and then go create community and interact and get away from living in a problem-based society. And where we just react, and we're talking all a very health-centered model here, where everybody's coming from a health standpoint rather than a deficit, and I think that's what we do. John, what, as far as the city of Mountain View, what's the future hold?
Well, we're going to continue, as Jeff was talking about diversity and inclusion. Well, Mountain View is going to still make it one of their high priorities to make sure that we have housing, or we build housing to include everybody. Because Mountain View has gone out and we built housing for the seniors, the veterans, the elderly, the disadvantaged. And so we do that as part of our job, is to make sure that there's always housing, always that mix of people that can live in Mountain View and afford Mountain View.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of our big issues right now, is making sure that we maintain our housing inclusivity.
Right, right. And again, getting back to that point of when you feel included, when you feel like you have purpose, then you can go out and forget about yourself because your needs are taken care of. And I think we over and over keep talking about this need of how do we develop a strong base? How do we develop strong individuals and strong, strong communities so that we do have a future rather than we're just attending to the ill and so forth. I think it's very encouraging, that both of these entities are working so diligently to bring about community. It's got to be satisfying to both of you to work in the fields that you do.
Absolutely.
To see the different people and the success stories and to people go from isolation back east to thriving and being part of a functioning community.
Absolutely.
It's wonderful to see, yeah. So I appreciate both of you talking about what does it mean to build community, and I think that it's really important that we all keep in mind that government is involved, nonprofits are involved, for-profits are involved. It takes integrating the entire, everybody. I mean, we need to integrate all those different perspectives, and you gentlemen have done a good job of showing us how to do that. So, thank you.
It's a big team.
It's
Absolutely.
a big team. Well, we've gotten to some discussion about how do we build community and what does it take. I think we've fostered some really good conversation and how can we bring about community from isolation. And we've got some good ideas. So thank you for joining us here at Abilities United Presents Community Connections. Thank you.